Welcome to 2Cents FC. I'm your host, Amobi Okugo, back again with my guy, L. Each week, we'll be talking with individuals from around the soccer world, learning about their stories and getting their unfiltered thoughts and opinions. This week, we're joined by Director, Sports Communications at Chicago Fire FC, my guy, Jhamie Chin. If anyone in the soccer world knows anything about Jhamie, he's as good as they come, one of the best in the biz, someone I consider a friend in this game. So we'll be getting to know all about Jhamie, talking about his sports PR journey, managing crisis, breaking into the business, and more. Jhamie, first and foremost, how you doing today?
My guy, I'm doing well. Thank you both for having me on. Big fan of the show for a long time. So it's nice to finally be a guest on here and kind of be, not behind the scenes as the PR guy, but the one doing the interview for a change. So appreciate you guys having me on.
Nah, thanks for coming. And, like the true PR communications legend you are, you came in suited and booted. So I know you're ready.
No.
But let's get right into it. L, what do we start out with? Last always.
Yeah, so to kick off every episode with a guest, we play a game called Two Truths in the Cap. So this is the game where Jhamie, you'll tell us 3 facts about yourself. 2 will be true, 1 will be a lie. And Amobi and I have to guess what the lie is. So whenever you're ready, go ahead and kick it off.
All right, perfect. I got to go with 3 good ones because it's got to be something that Moby can't easily figure out. So the first one is I attended Oscars after party. The second one is my middle name is St. Patrick. And the third one is I'm a distant cousin of Vybz Kartel, the legendary Jamaican artist.
Wow, that's pretty good. That's probably one of the best two truths in the cap we've got.
I'm gonna go with the middle name. Like, you must be a fan of Power.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to ask.
I'm gonna go with the middle name.
Jhamie St. Patrick Chin. Jhamie St. Patrick Chin. That it comes off the tongue pretty well, to be fair.
It does.
So it's not like it's like out of the ordinary. I mean, you do work in PR.
2 points
Everyone knows
for me, though.
Yeah. Everyone knows Jhamie, so like an Oscar party is not too far-fetched.
I can finesse my way into one of those, huh?
Yeah. Vybz Kartel. Nah, I'd go on Vybz Kartel, but you don't just say Vybz Kartel. That's the thing. I feel like I got to go different just because I need to catch up from L. So the cap is Vybz Kartel, distant cousin.
Mobe's got it. That's the one.
The middle name is actually St. Patrick.
My middle name, I swear to God, actually not just Patrick, St. Patrick, St. Patrick is the middle
That's
name.
crazy.
Okay, so what's the context of that?
Honestly, I've asked my parents, and the only answer they give me, I don't know if they're just not giving me the real story or whatever, but it's basically what you said. My mom just thought it flowed nicely, so she went with that, and for the longest time, it was kind of my thing until Ghost came along in Power, and now I'm copying him, but like, this is 30 plus years,
Yeah. Respect. Yeah. So I appreciate that, Jhamie, because now I'm one back from L. I was struggling.
He needed that.
And L, there was no corruption, man. I didn't send him a little text, let him know. That was pure. He earned that.
Nah, it's all good. Like, that was actually a really good one though, because it seemed too coincidental to be true. So
yeah.
That was a good
honestly,
one.
I swear to you, I didn't even remember the Power reference when I said it. I just know it's not something people would most likely believe. So I figured I'd throw y'all off a little bit. So
I low-key want to hear about this Oscar parties, because if I'm not trying to get you in trouble, but listen, if you're from Orlando, if you like played in Orlando and you need a plug, Jhamie was your guy. So this Oscar party is not too far-fetched. And then Vybz Kartel, is he your favorite artist or what?
He honestly was just the first Jamaican artist that came into my mind as I was thinking about it. But I was a big Vybz fan until he kind of got himself caught up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The Oscars thing, that's a story for off the record because it was college spring break. So
another day.
We'll that for another day. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into it then. First question we ask all our guests, all our family. When did you fall in love with soccer?
Oh man, that's a good question. Honestly, it's hard to really pinpoint, but I think from a really, really young age, because I was born in Kingston, Jamaica, where as you guys know, soccer, football is like a religion there. So, it's easily the biggest sport up there with track and field. So it's just any and everywhere. You're constantly surrounded by it. And my dad was really, really involved with the game. He had done some work for the youth national teams in Jamaica and like local high schools to kind of help grow the game. So I think with me and my older brother, he, from a very young age, kind of instilled his passion for the game onto us. And then from there, we just kind of ran with it. So yeah, I don't remember the exact age, but definitely from really, really young age, just because of where I was born and my family and everything like that.
No, I love that. And I love the fact that you come from a soccer family. Obviously, we have a relationship, so I know a little bit about your family. Your dad's heavily involved. Your older brother played professionally, and is now in the soccer agent space. And then you, working from the, executive front office space. Talk about your journey, coming from Kingston to the States, and, how did you find yourself to director of Chicago Fire SC?
For sure. I mean, if I get asked this question a lot, and I don't think I ever, when I was younger, thought I would be in this position. I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do, but I always loved playing soccer. So we moved to the US immediately. We were playing club soccer. We played all the way through high school and then into college as well. But in addition to soccer, I always used to love writing as well. And I remember pretty vividly in high school, I kind of took a journalism class just as like an easy elective. And the teacher told me, she's like, you know how that one goes. She's like, hey, like, you're pretty good at this writing thing. Have you ever thought about joining a newspaper staff? And I was like, I don't know. You got to stay after school, like one of them in my head. So I go home and I tell my pops I'm kind of bragging, about my writing. And true Jamaican, especially Jamaican Chinese dad, he's like, oh, were you taking newspaper class now? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I got soccer practice. He's like, no, you need more clubs, to get into college. Can't just be all sports. You need to diversify.
Yeah.
So had I not, tried to brag and then him kind of encouraging me into doing it, who knows what would have happened. But I got into that, thrived, really loved it. And then that kind of led me on this path to where I am now. And I went into college thinking about, okay, how can I kind of fuse my passion for writing and also playing sports as well? And when it got to that point in college where I realized professional thing probably wasn't going to work out because like you, Mobes, and a lot of other people, the grind for me, I love playing, but the grind is just, I never loved that part of it, right?
Yeah.
Work it takes. So I realized that pretty quickly. And then from there, just fortunately, Orlando City, which used to be in Austin at the time, had just moved to Orlando, I think after my junior year in college. My brother got signed after a tryout with them. And so that enabled me to kind of get a foot in the door and get an internship with them. And so started with an intern with them, I think back in 2011. And then I've just kind of been working my way up ever since.
No, that's amazing. And I love it because, a lot of people, don't know how to get their foot in the door when it comes to soccer from the business standpoint. And, there's so many ways to get involved rather than just, playing professionally. So for you, talk about your role. Obviously, you started off as an intern and then worked your way up, but like, what does your role entail?
Yeah, for me, the simplest answer is to really just to try to help get media coverage for the club. But sort of more specifically, I'm responsible for leading and executing the sporting communications strategy for the team. So just helping to shape the narrative around the first team and sort of help to amplify some of the stories in and around the team, either through our own media properties, our website, social media, video, or more specifically, external media properties to try to not only highlight the team, but strategically tell the story that we want to tell and highlight the things that we're doing well, which right now is a lot of off the field stuff. There is some stuff in the sporting space that's starting to kind of really come to fruition. And I think it's going to be, exciting for Chicago fans, especially in the next few months. But yeah, that's really kind of my role in a nutshell. A lot of teams, it's the PR staff does both sides, business and sporting. They cover both. Here we split it. So I have a counterpart here that I work with where she mainly focuses on the non-sporting side. So all the business announcements, community relations, that type of PR. My focus, which is what I prefer, is mostly on the team and the sporting side of PR. Yeah.
So how much of it is like being on the offensive with like, strategic communications, making sure you guys own your story and then like putting out fires versus, and no pun intended, Chicago Fire, but putting out fires in terms of like negative press or like, disgruntled fans or, a story about an athlete breaking out. Because when a lot
Yeah,
of people think about PR, there's like, oh, they're just here to cover the mistakes, but it's a
right.
combination of both.
No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I think most of my job is the proactive, is to be proactive.
Mhm.
And a lot of that is just trying to anticipate things that could come up or a position that media members might have and to try to get ahead of that and maybe give them context as to why certain things are happening, just so they can, you obviously can't tell them what to write or what to say about the team, but you can at least give them another perspective that kind of maybe helps to frame their thinking a little bit. And then, yeah, to your point, there's occasionally things that do come up that you kind of have to react to, but essentially, you want to always try to avoid that as much as you can and to be proactive with
Mhm.
things. It's not always going to happen, and you have to be prepared for that when it does. But in general, we just have to be. I mean, being in a big market, as you played in Philly, it's a little bit different than when you're in a Portland or Orlando, where the media coverage just came by itself. In that
Yeah.
situation, we were just more like managing the requests that we would get, and we had a Kaká on the team and big players in Portland as well. And so media coverage wasn't an issue. Whereas here, there's so many other things you're competing with. There's all the other
Yeah.
sports teams, two MLB teams, NBA, NFL, minor league hockey. There's just and entertainment, everything else in the city that comes with being a big city. So
Yeah.
for us to get coverage, especially when the team isn't doing as well on the field, we have to be proactive and make the media's life as easily as possible. Otherwise, we won't get coverage because with how
That's true.
much things have changed in the media landscape, their resources are thinner, right? Like news
Mhm.
staffs are getting cut, newspaper staff, same thing. So we really have to make it easy for them to cover the team because there's so much competition. So you have to do a little bit more work, but in that sense, it's also really rewarding too when you do get that coverage because you
Yeah.
had to work for it. You know what I mean?
That's
So,
perfect. So your
yeah.
phone is always by your side, right?
Always, always. Morning, night. There's no turning off. As much as we try to, I kind of pick moments.
Mhm.
But yeah, usually there's no such thing as going in at 9, leaving at 5, and then you don't touch anything until the next day. Just with social media and how things have
Yeah.
evolved, you just kind of always have to be available and on top of everything.
Yeah.
So
Can you talk about that from the standpoint of, someone that's looking into get into the sports, communications, PR space, like how you always have to be on, but like trying to find time to decompress, just from a mental health and, you know, having your self peace at the end of the day. Like how do you balance that?
no, it's a good question, and it's something that's really difficult to do. And I think I have gotten better at it as I've gotten older and a little bit more established in my career, and kind of figured out, especially just the length of a season and sort of pacing
Mhm.
yourself so that you're not getting burned out by the middle of the season or before the season ends. And it is, as much as you do need to be on, you also have to realize that if you're not performing, if you're not taking care of yourself, then you're not going to be performing at a good level, right? It's just like being
Mhm.
an athlete. So it's it's not the way I've tried to balance it is you can't obviously go completely dark and just not be
Yeah.
on any technology. But I sort of have certain times in the day, like when I'm home with my girlfriend, for instance, and we're having a meal or whatever, then there's no phones, right? But it's for a
Yeah.
short amount of time. Or I don't always do this. Before I go to bed or when I wake up, I try not to look at my phone. But we know it's the the
It's a,
first instant, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Hard, it's hard, it's hard. But or like just limiting my time on social media, trying to do something more productive than being on
Yeah.
social media. But when so much of your job revolves around that, it's kind of hard to have that off switch. But you just have to be kind of vigilant and have that
Yeah.
mental reminder that it's not good for you to be like this
Yeah.
all day.
All the time.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got a quick adjacent question to that.
Yeah.
You were with Orlando City as well as Portland. Were you there at the same time Amobi was there each time?
Both.
Yeah.
So
Man,
one of
we were following each other.
them. So Mose was there both in both occasions. We are there
Yeah.
in Portland. I think he went to maybe KC in between Orlando and Portland. And then we linked up in Portland again for a few years.
Dope.
I'm gonna give Mobes credit because Mobes is always really, really good to work with. Like we always say as PR professionals, like you kind of have your guys that you know you can go to no matter what for media. There's certain guys who just don't like to do it. There's guys who only like to do it if they score, they're doing well or whatever. Mobes had his moments, but for the most part, he was always, he was always very accommodating and a good pro about doing media whenever we asked him to. So I always appreciated that. I think that's kind of how we first started to develop a relationship in Orlando as well. Because he was one of the first players we signed. So we had him doing everything at one point, fan events, all these interviews and everything. And he was always really, really good to work with. So.
That's a great question, El. And you talk about that because a lot of people, obviously, you mentioned Kaka. That's a whole media PR system within itself. A lot of people ask me, what's it like playing with Kaka? But what's it like, managing that from a communications and PR standpoint? And then to double up on that question is like, you mentioned how difficult sometimes it is for athletes and PRs to like kind of work together.
Yeah.
What advice would you have if an athlete is looking to increase their brand? How important it is to be close with the communication staff and do those interviews when you might not want to?
No, for sure. That's a really good question. I would say with Kaká and even Basti here in Chicago, it was a lot.
No, you're a big stepper. He was like, hey, don't forget.
Big boy.
Don't forget, like, I'm doing Bayern Munich testimonials. I got Real Madrid, Ballon d'Or. Like, my bad.
No, I will say I've been fortunate in the sense that the two big players that I've been lucky enough to work with have been really, really good guys to work with that I think understood the value of having those relationships with media and being able to engage with the media, right? And it is a lot in the sense that you're getting a lot of media requests, and those guys, they usually have their own publicist as well that we have to work with. So it's not as if we get a request or we want to pitch a story and then we just facilitate it. There's certain channels that we have to go through that can kind of slow down the process, which makes it a little bit more complicated. But I will say those two guys, for the most part, and we were good about protecting them and making sure we're presenting them with the right opportunities and not just any and everything. But they were always very gracious and always very, happy to accommodate any media requests. And so to your question, Mobes, about, athletes and how they can leverage that, I would say, look at those two guys. Those are two guys who, especially when they had come over to the US, had won everything you could win, had no need to really do any media. They had huge brands, but they were still very respectful. They took the time to do interviews, always accommodating for us, because I think, they built a brand for themselves and they understood the importance of those relationships and how, being good to the media can benefit you in some ways. So I would just say, look to those guys, man. Those are the guys who have every reason to not be that way, and they're still doing it for a reason. So. No,
that's amazing. So, obviously you've been with Orlando City SC while it was an expansion. While it was the USL team, it was an expansion team. You worked with Portland, like an established big team in a small market, and now you're working with Chicago, smaller team, big market. So you have a lot of experience across the board. Can you talk about your last 3 years with Chicago Fire and going through a rebrand, which is kind of new and not a lot of people really face?
For sure. So we're about 15 minutes in and we got the rebrand question. I was wondering what it was going to come.
We gave you a heads up. You
did, to be fair. The last 3 years have been very good for me career-wise, man. At the time when I decided to move over here, like you said, I was leaving a very well-established club in Portland, good fan base, good on the field, good everything, to come to a project that was a little bit uncertain at the time, right? Like there was ambitions to sort of bring the club back to what it was in the late 90s, early 2000s when they won all the trophies and everything. But there was no guarantee that it was going to happen. But I will say one of the reasons that I did want to come was not only because of the city and being close to home.
Dinner on you, man. Dinner on you. Next time I pull up to Chicago, dinner on you.
Listen, man, I'm frugal too. I'm frugal like you. But not only that stuff it was the sort of challenge to help bring the club back to where it was, and also like we talked about earlier, where the media coverage wasn't taken for granted, and so being able to sharpen those tools to where you had to hustle to get media coverage, I just thought it would be a really good challenge for myself. But when I first came in, some of that stuff you were talking about earlier about putting out fires, there were a lot of fires, no pun intended, when I first came. The fans were protesting, so we're dealing with fan boycotts. The team wasn't really doing that well on the field. And then we were sort of in the middle of, or towards the end of, some strategic planning that was going to involve the rebrand that you mentioned, the logo, everything. But then within my first year, a lot of that changed because our current owner ended up buying the team fully, I think in September of 2019. And then that sort of trickled or kickstarted this really positive momentum of so many things. So we bought out the lease, or he bought out the lease, not we. Bought out the lease for the old venue, SeatGeek Stadium, also Toyota Park. Moved back into the city, into Soldier Field. Got back onto WGN. The team had just been on ESPN Plus. They weren't on local TV or anything. Got the games back on WGN, so more exposure. And then also the rebrand, which didn't go so well at the time. But then thankfully, our owner, who came out shortly afterward and said, hey, if it's not working, we'll fix it. We'll listen to the fans. And so after a year of sitting with it, clearly it wasn't sitting with the fans very well. We decided to change it and went in a much different direction, a very fan-focused project that I think saw over like 20,000 people give input as to what they wanted to see. And I think the crest that we have now is the result of that, right? You can see the impact it has when the soul of the club, the fans, actually, give their opinion and their thoughts as to what the crest should look like. So it's been a roller coaster, man, to be honest. There's been a lot of changes, new ownership, new sporting staff. We had a lot of momentum going into 2020, which was the first year after all those changes. We're supposed to have a sellout at Soldier Field, and COVID sort of derailed that a little bit. So I think now the focus is going into this off season and next season is to try to regain some of that momentum and have a kind of a vibrant full stadium at Soldier Field next year and moving forward as well.
Yeah, I saw you guys have some pretty nice like influencer boxes that you guys sent out. I think our address got lost somewhere in the shuffle. But,
definitely.
I may know someone I can.
But
I don't know. You might have got knocked off the list after that.
Man, I don't know, but yeah, definitely seems like you guys are doing. Appreciate it. Definitely seems like you guys are doing a lot to really drum up some fresh faces, fresh fanfare moving back into the city. So I definitely see the efforts. But kind of backing up to the rebrand for a second, there's an uproar about that. Then you mentioned coming in, and there's a lot of fires that you put out. What crisis handling advice would you give aspiring comms, professionals?
Oh man, that is a really, really good question. I guess the biggest piece of advice I would give is to not rush anything, right? And you have to respond immediately in the sense of, depending on the situation, where it's, hey, we're aware of this is going on and we won't comment, for the time being. But outside of that, I would say to just not rush and to take your time and to get all the facts, get all the information. And a lot of teams do this. We do this in Portland. We do it here as well. You sort of have a crisis committee. So different stakeholders in the organization, whoever you determine those people to be, it could be your legal, your head legal person, maybe your president, whoever is involved. And there's a discussion that needs to take place about what's the best way to handle the situation. So I think it's good to have a good team around, so you have different opinions and different perspectives on the best way to handle the situation. Don't rush, but also don't take too long, because the longer it's kind of sitting there without a response from you or your organization, then that just leads to people sort of speculating, and the narrative is kind of running on its own. So there needs to be some urgency, but I would just say it's better to get it right than to rush and just put something out, and then you got to put something else out to clean that up and the original one as well. So.
That's great.
Yeah, it's good. I would just say it's just good to sometimes just take a breath in those situations, because sometimes we just get so caught up in it and you can start to panic a little bit. Just take a breath, center yourself, and just focus on the task at hand, right? And like I said, just try to focus on getting it right and not doing it quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
One thing we like to do here is play hypotheticals. So like I always play hypothetical GM with the Amobi and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
But let's say, for example, you took over, direct your same role with the new team, and there's a huge like gambling scandal or something with the players. How
Mhm.
would you help this team bounce back from this negative press and PR?
sign a partnership with DraftKings.
Wow, putting me on the spot. I know it's funny that this actually just happened with a Sporting Kansas City player. I don't know if you guys saw this. Felipe
Yeah.
Hernandez, I think, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that they did, which I thought was good, was and I think the league was involved with this as well, was they tried to get the player help, right? And it seemed like, I don't want to speak on his situation, but it seemed like he kind of was struggling with gambling a little bit and was, had an addiction. So the first thing they did was try to get him help in that scenario, right? And then I think they followed up with like a public comment on that a little bit later. So I think it depends on the severity of the situation. If it's a one-time thing, if it's an ongoing thing, how deep is the issue? I would maybe need not to cop out of it. I'd probably need a little bit more information to give like appropriate counsel on it. But there's a part of it that is looking after the individuals themselves, and then also doing what's best for the business, the company also. So I think that would sort of dictate your response there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I would say something like the riverboat scandal with the Vikings from a few years back, Dante Culpepper and all that.
Oh yeah.
to be fair, though, Jhamie has done a great job with some PR crises. If you guys want to do your research, with some
I know
players,
exactly what you're talking about.
so he's done a great job handling those situations. What I will say about Chicago, and I want to ask this the last question on rebranding, because we can only talk about it so much.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I feel like your owner has done a great job of like listening to the pulse of the city, the pulse of the fans. A quote that always sticks with me, when I become a future GM, owners will come and go, coaches will come and go, players will come and go, but fans will always be there. So how much of it is like, putting your own imprint on the club, but also listening to the fans when it comes to that rebrand?
No, for sure. I mean, I think in general, there's been, in addition to myself, there's been so much new blood at the club because of everything we're trying to do to sort of reinvent the team. And you also have a good number of people here that have been here for, 20 plus years from the very beginning. And so it's always a balance of wanting to reinvent the club, but also being true to the history of the club as well, because that's something that's the most meaningful to supporters in all of football, is what I've noticed, is maintaining that history, and that club that they originally identified with from the very beginning. And I think those conversations, to your point, Mose, are important because we might have our own perspective on how we think the club should be and who we should be as a club, but the fans might say, no, this is what we identify with, right? Like this is why we fell in love with the club. And so I think through those conversations, you can then sort of find a happy medium where it's like use the original Florian Cross logo, for example, right? There's a lot of people that really identified with that, but we felt there needed to be a balance of still keeping some of those elements from the original crest that people really identified with, but sort of modernizing it a little bit. And so I think that's been the approach all across the board, not just with the logo. And so even in the new logo, you see there's a modernized Florian Cross. There's certain elements that were in the original one, so that an OG fan could see it and be like, okay, I see Chicago Fire in this, and a newer fan can look at it and say, oh, that's dope. Like that could connect with them as well. So I think overall, those discussions are important because they can kind of help keep you on track, if you know what I'm trying to say.
No, respect.
Yeah.
So Jhamie, when it comes to people in the communication space, Outside of you, I think there's only one that I've come across in my time in MLS and USL, working directly with the team. And shout out to the OG Karith Gabriel. He doesn't work in the space anymore, but from the Philly days. How do we get more people, like us for us in this space? What's your solution?
Oh man, the $1 million question. It's tough. It's tough. It's not. There's not many of us, especially at the club level, like you said. And I think the challenge has always been that in America, and it's obviously changing, but we are more focused on other sports. But there's also a lot of people of color that do play soccer as well. And so I think it's on sort of us when we get into hiring positions to try to change the pattern a little bit and try to bring people in that even if they don't necessarily have the traditional experience that lines up with what you normally go with for a certain position,
Mm-hmm.
it's still, I don't want to say taking a gamble, but I think it's about giving people a chance. And that's something I try to keep in mind when I'm looking for any positions that I'm hiring for, right? It's not the only thing, but it's something, because a lot of times we look at their resume and say, oh, well, they don't have this internship or they don't have this experience, like probably wouldn't be a good fit. But not everyone has the ability to do unpaid internships, right? Or these
Yeah.
other things that are able to give them experience. And so sometimes you need to be the person that gives someone a chance, right? To help them get in. So I mean, it's a really complicated topic. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I feel like in terms of what I can do to help, that's something that I'm very mindful of, is like, how can I kind of open the door for other people that look like me to come in behind me and not just say, oh, I made it. I'm good. I got you. Y'all got to figure it out and get yourself there. Like, that's never, what I mean? So
like, just do what I did.
yeah. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, like that.
Work hard.
Yeah. You need someone opened the door for me. It wasn't a person of color, but it's such a competitive industry. You do need a little bit of luck along the way. And also something that I'm mindful of too, just lastly, is like how I kind of carry myself and conduct myself, because whether we want to admit it or not, people are looking at that, right? If you get into a leadership position and you're not doing well, they might say, well, you know what I mean? So it's like not giving them any reason as to say why you shouldn't have a person of color or a woman or any sort of marginalized community in those positions.
So you telling me I need to change, and I get my blazer, and I got to shave? That's what you're saying right now.
Listen, man, you already looking good in the suit. I saw the engagement photo. You got it, bro. You're good. You're good.
Hey, so you mentioned earlier.
Vibe is in now, anyways. I know.
Winter season, you got to get ready.
So you mentioned earlier about access, and so like, what are some things that the Fire are doing? Like on the community side, even like engaging the Black community more, engaging marginalized communities more, not only on the pitch but also like in other roles that that may not involve athletics, but like to your point, the PR roles, marketing roles, creative roles with the team.
Right.
Are there any programs or anything like that you guys are working with?
So we're doing it. We do a lot, quite a bit actually, more than most teams that I'm aware of at the moment. But I think we also realize there's opportunity to do more. So to your point, a lot of what we do at the moment is sort of centered around sport, like soccer programming. So we have this sort of social and emotional learning program. It's called the PLAYS program. It's an acronym. Don't quiz me on what the acronym means. I can't remember off the top of my head. But we basically partnered with a ton of schools in Chicago public schools. It's a significant number. I can't remember the exact number. And we go in and we sort of, with kids of all ages, we come in to provide, in various communities as well, soccer programming to help not only introduce them to the game, but there's good life skills that they learn through that program as well. And our owner actually just contributed to, there's a group of people that purchased this huge $31 million facility in one of the most underprivileged neighborhoods in Chicago on the west side. And it's basically going to be this huge facility that will be the headquarters for our PLAYS programming, but it's basically a big recreational facility that it does after school programming and different things to kind of keep kids off the street and just get them in more productive things. So an activity. So that's a big part of what we do now, and obviously donations and everything through our community relations department. But to your point, more professional opportunities sort of in the front office, I think, is an area that we're really looking at, that we're focusing on as well. Oh, and we're also partnered with Common Goal. I don't know if you guys have heard of Juan Mata's. I think we're the only MLS team to partner with them as well. So we do really a lot through sports programming.
That's big time.
But we need to do more, I think, and could do more in other areas, to your point.
No, respect. That's
Nice.
what it's all about.
Yeah.
So any plans to invite Chicago Sky out to, one of the final home games?
Listen,
Champions
man,
in the city?
We have our final home game Saturday against RSL. We sent an invite to the Sky. They may or may not have left us on red for the moment. So if they're watching this, invitation is still there. Halftime recognition, come on. But they've had a lot going on. They had the parade to plan, which was amazing. It was cool to see how many people were there, and I'm sure they're getting an influx of invitations from teams and organizations all over the city. But yeah, we got an invite out, man. The Sky, Candace Parker came home and did her thing, man.
Brought the chip home, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
no, that's what it's all about. So, real quick, should we go to rapid fire? Because I got a couple questions I could probably ask you, Jhamie.
Nah, do your thing.
All right, so real quick, we want to ask you some quick questions and then go from there. So, Jhamie, what would your dream client or team to do comms for outside of Chicago Fire be?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I would say it would have to either be Arsenal, which is my team in the Premier League, best team in London, or the LA Lakers, who's my other favorite NBA team, especially with all the old heads and stars they got out there now.
Okay.
I would say I'm happy at the Fire. My bosses are watching this, but if I had to pick outside of those two, outside of the Fire, it would be those two.
Okay.
All right, I got a follow up to that Lakers one. So now that the Lakers is basically like an all-star team, obviously there will be things that swirl around in the media about particular players. So like, for example, they're already crying about Russell Westbrook and the way he's playing, right? So how would you kind of handle that storm that's coming? Like, I know like the Lakers is like a huge task in itself, but you got Melo, AD, Bron, Westbrook. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, look, you're right. It's a completely different beast. The thing with LA, and I'm sure it's the same for New York and even Chicago to a certain extent, is when you go to those big markets, like especially when you're a big player, part of it is understanding that scrutiny is going to come for better or worse. So if you're dominating and doing, even LeBron still gets it. I can't even use him as an example because it's kind of a weird one where he gets so much hate despite how great he is. But it's just, it sort of comes with the territory. So unless it's a crisis of some sort, then you kind of just have to, in my opinion, just roll with the punches, and then you have to be smart about what interviews and what opportunities you're putting those players in front of to help protect them a little bit based on how things are going, the climate, how they're playing, everything. But honestly, my opinion is part of it is when you're in a big market, big team like that with big expectations, it's not about just making the playoffs for them. It's chip or bust, right?
Yeah.
So, and especially when you're playing with a guy like LeBron, like you're gonna have so much more media attention. So it's more about rolling with the punches and then also counseling them as best as you can. I don't know how those guys are at that level if they take counsel from the PR guys, but making sure they don't say the wrong things, when they're in interviews or have a soundbite that's going to then follow them for however many weeks or games or whatever, right? Trying to set them up for success as much as you can, but there's no way to sort of minimize the coverage if it's negative or not. You just have to, that comes down to how they're playing on the court. So in most cases.
Okay. All right. So to continue rapid fire, you spoke about LeBron. Best way to announce a return, the decision or the letter?
Oh my Lord. I was not a big fan of the decision, to be honest.
Okay.
Which letter? The KD letter?
Like the KD letter, the MJ letter, or even the LeBron letter is just like
Yeah,
only
yeah.
written.
I think out of those two, I prefer the letter. Like I even love the one the Galaxy did for Zlatan, where they took out the full page ad and it was just like "You're welcome." That was it. That was on there. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I think it was really clever. The decision for me, maybe it was a little bit ahead of its time,
Mhm.
but just remember back then, it was like it just didn't come across the right way and seemed a
Yeah.
little disrespectful, maybe to Cleveland. But to each his own. For me, it's the letter.
All right.
Yeah.
Should every athlete have a publicist?
Yes. I don't know about every athlete, but I think depending on the sort of tier that you're
Uh-huh.
at, right? Um, I think if you're sort of dealing with a high volume of media requests, then, or you have, a pretty big brand, then yes, I think you should. But I think otherwise there's plenty of good people like myself, shameless plug at the club level that can help steer you for free, essentially, right? Like it's a good resource you have. So unless you're kind of anticipating big media coverage or anything like that, I think you're good with guys at the club level. Hopefully
cool.
that doesn't hurt maybe a future business idea for you. You
Have
teach
you-
that, Mobes, and I don't
We're good. Have you ever had to stop an interview, like mid-interview, because like they had the interview, they told you like the questions, and then like they went completely left? And
Honestly, no, I never have. And I will say, for the most part, like the soccer media here in the US, they're pretty good for the most part. They're not. I know in some other countries, like you probably talk to guys when they come over, it's like their view of the media is a little bit different because over there it's like they're always maybe trying to twist what you say or they're pushing for something. Media over here, for the most part, they're really, really good. So usually when you agree to something, they usually stick by it. So I haven't had to come in.
Have you ever had to revoke a media pass?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't think I've had to do it myself directly, but there was one instance I think in Orlando, someone like asked for a selfie with Kaká or something, and that's like a clear no. Like,
Come on, man, act like you've been here before.
act like exactly in the locker room and everything. And I think we did have to pull the credential for that one because again, it's about protecting the player. Like in his locker room trying to focus on the game.
All right, what's your view on athletes saying no comment, like doing the Marshawn Lynch approach?
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Yeah.
Not a fan. Only because I think it won't do you any good in the long run, right? Like the media, I know it can seem like a nuisance, but it's part of your job, and it's also it's not going to help the media do their job any better. And so it's first of all, it depends on the situation. So if it's something that you clearly just don't want to answer, it can come across as like an admission of guilt almost.
Yeah.
And secondly, it just looks like you're just disinterested and you don't want to be there, right? It's just, to me, not a good look, especially if you do it over and over and over again. I think it is acceptable in certain moments, right? Like if it's something that's a little bit sensitive and you're saying, hey, look, there's other people at the club that get paid to deal with this. I'd rather not comment on it.
Yeah.
That's fine. And there's different ways to say it too. Like what I just said then, no comment, right? If you just come on to no comment, it's perceived differently than, hey, I just want to focus on the game. So I'd rather not talk about that right now. We'll just talk about the game against Real Salt Lake this weekend or whatever it is, right? You're saying the same thing, but it's a little bit different than just a rude, like, no comment,
Okay, perfect. So I got a couple more and we'll go to the next thing. All right. So why, obviously certain journalists get preferential treatment. Have you ever pushed a story to a certain journalist beforehand?
No comment.
I was like, even to blow his cover up. I'm out here dry snitching on his stuff.
Wait, my bad. I'd rather talk about the Real Salt Lake.
I'd rather talk about the upcoming home game. Make sure you guys get your tickets. And then last one. Last one.
Get this man in trouble.
Yeah. So athletes, media training is required, or I'm sure you think it's like mandatory. 4 themes or sectors in media training that you think every athlete should focus on.
Oh, four areas of media training?
Yeah, sorry, exactly. 4 areas.
That's a good question. I would say like the length of your answers. So try to
Ooh,
be more
I like
concise and
that.
not too, you know what I mean? Little things like making eye contact as well with the journalist, knowing their name as well, knowing their name because it's all, you know, and thanking
Yeah.
them for their time, being polite, that type of thing. And then the other one that I would say is you should go into every interview with the understanding that even though they're asking you a question, you're sort of dictating the interview and the message that you want to get across. So, and the PR person should help you with this as well. Go into the interview with a couple points that you want to get across, and then that leads into how to be concise, because you guys see sometimes on TV or even in print, they sometimes just use like a piece of your answer.
Yeah.
So if you really want to get the message across, it's better to be concise so that they just use exactly the part that you want them to use, if that makes sense.
How
So
was that?
I guess go into it with like some sort of strategy in mind. Don't just go in there to say whatever. Know what you want to get across, and you can always ask the PR person too, like, "Hey, what are they going to ask me about? You know, what are some topics?" And then if there's anything you want to get their recommendation on how to answer, then that's what they're there for.
Yeah. Ooh, 2-minute masterclass. That's why Jamie's the best in the business.
Bars.
If you're an athlete or you work with athletes, just take that clip and just like play it. Ooh, I love that. Appreciate it.
I was
No
putting
doubt.
that clip behind the paywall.
Oh,
You can't
yeah,
put that
for
away
sure.
for free, man.
Too much game right there.
US game right there, for real, for real. 2 cents. Where else are you gonna get that information?
Sure. All right, but let's jump into one of our favorite segments of the show.
yeah.
No card, yellow card, red card. So this is a rapid fire segment where I'll read off some news headlines, and our guest Jhamie and Amobi will give their opinions on the headlines using the soccer card system. So no card is, I agree with it, I'm cool with it. Yellow card is I can go either way, and red card is obviously, I disagree or foul. I'm not cool with it, and they'll give a little explanation of why they gave that card. So got it.
Sorry, say that. So yellow card could go either way.
Yeah, it's like I'm indifferent essentially. Like
Okay.
I can go either way.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
All right. So first up, so word on the street is that FIFA will move forward with the World Cup every 2 years. In addition to that, there's a consideration of not letting a team compete in 2 consecutive World Cups back to back. So what card are we giving FIFA for that? For this arrangement that they're kind of proposing?
Go ahead,
Jhamie,
Mo.
I'll let you go first.
That's a red card. That's a red card. It seems like they're trying to do like the International Continental Champions Cup that they do every year in the United States. Like, I need to get rid of that stuff. That idea is atrocious.
No, I feel the exact same way. Red card for me as well. I think one of the things that makes the World Cup what it is the fact that it's every 4 years. And so when you bring it down to 2 years, it kind of loses that, at least to me, some of that significance, It doesn't make it feel like this big event like it does every 4 years. So red card all the way.
Okay. All right, next one. So it was reported at the ESPN W Summit by Angel City FC owner Julie Ehrman that 1% of ticket sales will go to the players. So what card are we giving Angel City for this?
Oh, for me, no card. I think it's good. I mean, maybe you can go a little bit higher in the percentage, but I think they're probably one of the first teams to ever even consider this. So for me, I like it. Angel City, it looks like they're not coming around to play any games in terms of like the marketing, the treatment of players, and so I think there's going to be a main attraction for a lot of women that are looking to play in the States or in the NWSL. So I'm excited to see how it goes.
Agreed. Same exact thing. Echo what Amobi said. I think in addition to this, they also, every corporate partnership deal they get, I think, or maybe it's not for every, just certain deals, but a portion of that revenue goes to certain charitable causes as well. So I feel like just with everything going on in the NWSL right now, this is sort of a newer club that's trying to maybe change the precedent and do things differently. And they're already in LA. That's enough motivation to want to go there and play. Now you put in this fund. I mean, that's a differentiator for sure. So.
For sure.
All right, last one. And this is probably this will probably be in your lane a little bit, Jhamie, from a PR crisis management standpoint, right?
Okay.
So
not another rebrand one, is it?
No.
This is a little bit more tricky. All right, so Mauro Icardi is having women problems again. So he unfollowed everybody except his wife from social media in an attempt to get her back. So the backstory of this is he allegedly, has some relations with, the wife of one of his idols, Maxi Lopez. And he's also threatening to leave PSG until his wife comes back. So what card are we giving Mauro for this situation that he's in?
Red card.
And then as a bonus, how would you handle that from a PR standpoint?
First of all, red card. For me, there's two different things to it. So it's one, the infidelity, red card on that, first of all. But second of all, you don't bring your problems at home to the office. So now talking about not wanting to be at PSG because it's something you did, like for me, that's big red card all the way. In terms of how I would handle it, man, I don't know. It's tough because I don't have all the. We just know what we're seeing being reported in the press. But if I were him, if I were counseling him, it would be my recommendation to not be publicly doing all these things, unfollowing people. I would say lay low and deal with this stuff privately at home with your wife. You know what I mean? And definitely, like I said earlier, don't bring your home baggage to work, man. Don't like that's not gonna be a good look for your current employer or any future employer, right? You don't look very stable doing that. So.
He said very stable.
no hate on Icardi, good player. Just my opinion.
Yeah, you got to give him that red card. You might have to give a couple games too after that because this is a debacle. First and foremost, you get him how you lose him how you get him. So, Icardi.
This ain't the first time, right?
Yeah. So his current wife was his former teammate's wife. Right? He did a little snake move. And then now, if you're trying to be a bachelor, then you got to be a bachelor all the way. Shout out to Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter did it. If there's a blueprint of how to be a bachelor, Derek Jeter. If he could do whatever he wants because no one's like, oh, he's single, he's doing that. But if you want to be a family man and a bachelor, it doesn't mesh well.
With your teammates.
Exactly.
By the way, come on, man.
So that's another lesson for anyone listening.
His wife is agent also.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Now you're mixing business and pleasure, your money with your honey. Like, come on. There's a lot wrong here. So,
there's multiple cards, multiple games,
multiple cards. And then on top of that, now you're letting it affect your status within your team. You're going on socials, Instagram unfollows, like that's gonna help. And you're going right. It's a TV drama that's waiting to be seen.
Telenovela for sure.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Hey, prayers to that man. But
he's going through it.
For the whole world to see as well.
All right, well, that's it for this week's no card, yellow card, red card. Moby, what you got?
Yeah, Jhamie, first and foremost, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on our platform. Really appreciate you. For anyone that's trying to tap in, to be the next Jhamie Chin or, learn from you, where can they tap in? Where can they follow you?
Man, at Jhamie, Jhamie Chin, Chin, spelled regularly. Same thing on Instagram as well, on LinkedIn too. Just spell my name how it's spelled, Jhamie, last name Chin. I'm always responding to LinkedIn messages, especially for anyone looking to get into the industry. Always willing to chat, kind of share ideas, talk about different things. So feel free to give me a shout. My DMs, as they say, are always open. So, and thank you to you both for having me on, man. Like I said, always been a fan of the show. Feel really honored that you guys thought about having me on here. Yeah, thanks a lot.
No, most definitely. So be prepared because Chris, one of the 2Cents sports co-founders, announced that there will be a summit within the next 2 years. And Jhamie will have a masterclass presentation on how to handle media, how to say no comment, So we'll be tapped in. Make sure
I
you
gave
tap
you
in.
tip already, man. Take your tip.
So make sure you tap into Jhamie if you want to connect with them. Make sure you tap in with everything we got going on with 2 Cents Sports, 2 Cents FC. A lot's happening. But that's our show for this week. Subscribe, rate, and review. It helps us get discovered. Follow us on the socials at 2 Cents FC. Check out our merch at 2centsports.shop. As you can see, I'm rocking the hat. We got cozy season collection coming soon. A lot of things are happening. If you enjoy the show, consider dropping us a donation using the link in the description. It helps support the cost of the show. It helps us get wonderful guests like Jhamie. It helps us keep our content behind or outside of paywalls, like some other channels that do that. And tweet us your comments on the show and any topics you want me or Elle to discuss. The only place you're getting unfiltered thoughts and opinions, the only place you're getting unique perspectives from people that you may not hear from on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. 2 Cents FC, 2 Cents Sports. Elle, what else you got?
Yeah, that's it, man. Definitely check out blackstar.com. Great program starting up piloting in Detroit next weekend. So we'll be on the ground in Detroit next weekend, tapping in with them, creating access for the Black community in soccer in the Detroit area. I know it's not Chicago, but I had to plug that since we're directly connected. So definitely check out blackstarsoccer.com. And yeah, just tap in with us every week. Like Amobi mentioned, cozy season is coming. Next couple of weeks we should be dropping. So keep an eye out for that. We'll definitely bombard your socials when the new stuff drops. So consider copping and
yeah. Last question, Jhamie. You are in Chicago. Favorite Chicago pizza spot?
Oh, Pequod's by far. For anyone that's in and around Chicago, Pequod's, man. There's a lot. There's the Illuminati's, Giordano's, all the popular ones, but that's kind of the one that where somebody from the city gives you a little spot that you might not know about, and it's man, unbelievable.
Giordano's is my spot, but I'm gonna have to try that next time I'm in the city.
You won't even think about Giordano's once you have Pequod's, bro. This is different level. So
I'm gonna have to tap in with you next time I'm in the city, man.
What I will say, if a Jhamie recommendation is like a Michelin star recommendation, he doesn't miss when it's with his recommendations. He man saved me in Orlando. So
with the yard food, the Jamaican food, huh?
Yeah. Respect.
Oh,
all right,
man.
well, till next week, y'all. Peace
Sounds
out.
good.
Yeah.